Welcome to Comfort Crime with Lindsay Sanchez, a cozy mystery podcast where no actual crimes have been committed. Today we'll continue Murder on Maple Mountain, a cozy mystery with an amateur sleuth, a second chance romance, and a killer who won't stop until they finished what was started 12 years ago. If this is your first time here, please start with Episode 1, Chapter 1, or feel free to start with the prequel short story, Death at Dogwood Lake. There is a link to both in the show notes. For everyone else, we'll continue to Chapter 7. But first, an update. This is a slightly awkward but completely necessary update. Remember how I told you that I'm obsessed with collecting good names, kind of like a dragon hoards treasure, and how I invited all of you to email me if you wanted a cameo in a book? Well, all of that is still true. Your name could end up on a charming bakery owner or a suspiciously knowledgeable gardener. I'm not backing down from that offer. But here comes the part where my fictional legal team makes me add a disclaimer. While this story may feature places that sound familiar and characters who might remind you of people you know, I'm talking to you. You know who you are. Everything happening in this book is completely fictional. It all springs from that magical, slightly chaotic place in my brain where imaginary people have lengthy conversations, bake elaborate desserts, and tend to suspiciously perfect flower gardens in picturesque mountain villages. Any similarities to actual events or real-life people are purely coincidental, or maybe just a product of innocent admiration. Because let's be honest, if your Aunt Martha makes the world's best lemon bars, my fictional character Mildred might too. Think of it this way. I'm writing about the essence of small-town charm, not a documentary. Nobody's actual secrets are being spilled, just fictional ones, with fictional consequences and a fictional amateur detective who really should leave things to the professionals, but she never does. So, if you email me your name and ask to be put in a book, just know that the fictional you might end up doing things the real you would never dream of, like discovering a dead body behind the begonias, or maybe putting one there. Last time, with Ivy's funeral scheduled that day and a closed casket burial planned, Georgia had mere hours to prove what she knew in her gut. Someone had murdered the miserable old woman. But convincing anyone to take her seriously wasn't easy, especially when the victim's family was more interested in getting Ivy in the ground than in finding answers. Murder on Maple Mountain, Chapter 7. George's brain turned over every possible meaning of what they had just discovered as Lisa went to hug her brother and forced him to sit at the table next to Georgia, handing him the last donut. Could the poison really have been meant for Rose? As hard as it was to believe that Ivy was the target of murder, it was almost impossible to envision the real target being sweet little Rose. "Can you?" Georgia started to say, but Lisa shot her a look. "Don't tell him," she whispered. "Don't get him involved, not this time." "I'm just asking him a question." Georgia rolled her eyes. "It's not like it's my fault he was involved last time." "I'm serious." Lisa's normal perma-smile was replaced with a frown. "Tell me what?" Jake chewed and swallowed, looking between the two of them, back and forth, like he had no idea what was going on and he wasn't sure if he wanted to. Can you think of any reason someone might want to hurt Rose? Georgia turned away from Lisa. No, he raised his eyebrows. Can you? Sienna said some weird things have been happening on Maple Mountain. What do you know about that? Jake and Lisa both shook their heads. Lisa's eyes were wide, but Jake's narrowed. I hope you're not looking for trouble where there isn't any. That's the best place to look for trouble, where there's nothing to find. Georgia almost laughed. Almost. Until she remembered her visit to the police station. Did Officer Briggs call you? That was the hardest part about living in a small town. Everybody knew everything about everybody. If they hadn't heard the gossip yet, they soon would. Officer Briggs hadn't believed her that Ivy had been killed, meaning it wasn't an open investigation, meaning it was fair game. Anything she said could and would be held against her, publicly. What? No. Jake shook his head. Why would he call me? If something's wrong with Rose, you better tell me. Jake folded his arms, his scary guy act seriously diminished by the sprinkling of powdered sugar the donut had left on his 5 o'clock shadow. Everyone looked out for Rose. With Tom gone, and Eric in prison, and little Ryder taken to his aunt's, Rose had been all alone. Nothing's wrong with Rose, Lisa reassured Jake. There's just been a few weird things happening. Georgia reached out to pat his arm. She stopped herself halfway and pulled her hand back. Like what? Like Ivy getting poisoned, Georgia blurted out. She didn't mean to tell him. Not like that, so bluntly and without preamble. But she needed him to know how serious this might be. I thought we weren't going to tell him. Lisa glared daggers across the table. He was going to get it out of you anyway. You never could keep a secret. Lisa shrugged like, okay, true, and relaxed into her chair. Jake froze. For a moment, it looked like he might laugh at such a ridiculous idea, or scold them for being silly schoolgirls who'd let their imaginations run away with them. What makes you say that? He finally asked. Oh, it's nothing. Lisa tried to laugh it off. He wouldn't buy it. She was a very old woman. Jake rubbed his forehead like he couldn't believe he was hearing this, and he eyed the door like he couldn't wait to leave. But they were in too deep now. They might as well see what he knew. There were some signs of poisoning. Georgia started the story at the beginning, with Ivy cutting off Rose at George's flower booth, walking him through finding her at the pumpkins, and realizing what that smell had been. Then, finally, confirming it that morning while arranging flowers. And then there's the fact that somebody was so desperate to get her in the ground, it's barely been 24 hours since she passed and she's already buried. Jake shifted in his chair, looking uncomfortable now. You know something, Georgia pressed. I don't think her being buried quickly has anything to do with poison. Jake tugged at his collar, like it was suddenly too hot. He waved away Lisa's offer of hot chocolate. They were just hurrying so that April could be there. Yeah, that would make sense, except why couldn't she just fly back in a week? I'm sure her job would at least give her a day or two for bereavement. That makes sense. Jake nodded, then passed his hands over his eyes, some wave of fatigue hitting him. I just know it has nothing to do with any potential poison. What do you know? Lisa demanded. I'm the reason she was buried so fast. Jake's hands turned to fists on the table. It wasn't about poison. It had nothing to do with that. Then why? Georgia waited, none of them breaking the silence. Lisa patted Jake's back, like she already knew the answer. What am I missing? Georgia put up her hands. Hello, can someone please fill me in? I have to go. Jake got up and practically ran out the door. What was that? Georgia watched the door swing shut, the little bell tinkling Jake's departure. Lisa picked up the empty plate from the table. Georgia grabbed the mugs and followed her friend behind the counter and through the swinging double doors that led to the kitchen. What was that? Georgia set down the mugs, took the plate from Lisa, and nodded to Amelia in the corner, where she was rolling out dough. Nothing. Lisa started rinsing out the mugs. Let me do that. Georgia took them back and loaded them into the dishwasher. Your fingers need to heal. They're fine. Lisa flexed her bandaged fingers, but let Georgia do the dishes all the same. What was that with Jake? Georgia asked again, waiting for Amelia to leave before talking about Ivy and Rose. Nothing, Lisa said, a little too quickly. What aren't you telling me? There's nothing to tell. Lisa's voice was a little too high, and she was avoiding eye contact. She knew something. And Georgia knew her. She wouldn't have to pry. All she had to do was wait. Lisa would tell her eventually. Amelia wrapped the dough in plastic and walked down the hall to the fridge. What about around here? Georgia gestured to Lisa's kitchen. Anything weird happened lately? I still don't think it was the cake. Lisa started loading the rinsed dishes into the dishwasher. And if it wasn't the cake, then Rose isn't involved at all. Unless she's the one who poisoned Ivy, Georgia mused. She was there with us when it happened. Lisa rolled her eyes. I'm joking. Well, I'm serious. If people think my cakes are poisoned, no one's going to want to buy them. Georgia wanted to point out that some people would still buy them, but not to eat. Not for themselves, anyway. Lisa wasn't in the mood. But if it was the cake, we would have a worse problem than before, she whispered to Lisa. Everyone had a motive to kill Ivy. We had too many suspects. But Rose? No one would want to kill her. We don't have a single lead. I can't think of anybody. Lisa took another rinsed plate from the pile. Me either. Georgia finished the small stack in the sink and started handing plates one by one to Lisa. They wouldn't get anywhere until they knew who the real target was. So, have you noticed anything strange lately? Georgia asked casually, not wanting to aggravate Lisa. What kind of strange? Amelia was back from the fridge, hanging her apron on the hook by the doorway, clearly getting ready to leave for the day. Oh, just anything. Georgia dried her hands on the dish towel by the sink. Like people asking questions? Like you're doing right now? She gave Lisa a wry smile. Exactly. Georgia didn't take the bait and back off. Yes, exactly like I'm doing right now. Or anybody hanging around that usually doesn't. Amelia looked pointedly at Lisa, who just rolled her eyes. As far as I can tell, you're the only one acting strange lately. But I'd be acting strange too if my ex came into town with a new girlfriend. Lisa stifled the laugh, hiding it in a cough. Besides you, it was weird when Frank got locked out. What happened? Georgia tried not to seem too eager. That was nothing. Lisa took the towel from Georgia and dried her own hands. Frank comes early to start the dough for the day, so it can rise. He says he's awake anyway, and that us young people should get our sleep. She took off her own apron and hung it on the hook next to Amelia's. I guess he forgot to disengage the automatic lock, so when he left his phone in the car and went out to get it, he couldn't get back in. When was this? Yesterday. Amelia gathered her coat and gloves from the break room. Yesterday? Georgia followed Lisa back to the front and helped her turn out the lights. The same day you burned your fingers and were forced out of your routine? They're not related. Lisa locked the front door. Maybe, but if there's a chance Rose is in danger, someone has got to warn her. Georgia blew Lisa a kiss and ran to the back door. If they were right, if this meant Rose was the real target, she might still be in danger. Georgia ran to her truck and drove up the mountain as fast as the old hunk of junk would let her. Just before the sun set, Georgia parked on the road by Rose's cabin and wound her way up the shoveled path to Rose's front door. Through the half-cracked blinds, lights from a TV flashed, blocked only by the silhouette of a fat cat curled up on the back of the couch. Georgia took a deep breath on the doorstep and took out her phone. As much as she really didn't want to call Officer Briggs, she had to. If something happened to Rose, something that could have been prevented, she would never be able to forgive herself. The line rang until a recorded robotic voice kicked in, directing Georgia where she could leave a detailed message along with her name and number. I have reason to believe Rose Harding could be in danger. This is Georgia Lennox. Please give me a call as soon as possible. Georgia couldn't bring herself to say more on the message, not when the whole station already thought she was crazy. Just as Georgia was about to knock on Rose's door, it swung open. Rose, bundled in her coat, scarf, and hat, stood holding a large paper sack. "Oh, my goodness, dear, you scared me." She stumbled back, steadying herself on the doorframe. "Sorry, Rose, just coming to check on you. How was the funeral?" "I didn't like that woman, but I have to admit she had great taste." "What do you mean?" Georgia almost relaxed. Rose was here, safe, healthy, standing on her porch. With the warmth and light from her cabin streaming through the door and a bright smile on her face, it was nearly impossible to imagine anything bad happening at all, let alone to her. Apparently, in her will, she insisted on no eulogy, no speakers at all. One poem and one song, that was all she would allow. Once that was over, the few of us that were there ate Lisa's wonderful food, and that was it, the end. It was the best funeral I've ever been to. "Rose, there's something I have to tell you." Georgia hated to bring down the mood, but between the cake, the smell of almonds, and Frank being locked out, things were adding up. Too many to think they could all be a coincidence. "All right, walk with me, dear. I'm taking this to Frank. Poor man, he loved her. I have no idea why, but he did, and he was so distraught today he couldn't eat. Well, even a sad man has to keep up his strength." She patted the bag and reached for George's arm as she stepped onto the freshly shoveled porch. "Sean came by today and took care of the snow for me. He's such a good boy." "Rose," Georgia tried again as she led her down to the main road. With the sun setting, it wouldn't be safe to take the shortcut. Can you think of a reason someone might want to hurt you? What an idea, Rose laughed. Lots of people would want to hurt me. What? That was not the answer Georgia was expecting. She couldn't think of a single soul. Oh, yes, Rose nodded, unfazed by Georgia's shock. Many people. For starters, all of Tom's old enemies. Georgia had been so busy denying any similarities between finding Ivy's body and finding Tom's that she hadn't considered that there might be a connection between them. But thinking about Rose in this way, as Tom's widow, it hit differently. Do they blame you for what happened with Dogwood Nursery? Oh, yes, Rose said, enthusiasm infusing her voice. Eric is my son, and though he was 18 and legally out of my control, they think I should have been able to prevent the sale. I imagine when they lie awake at night, some of them have fantasies of hurting me. Has anyone ever tried? Have you gotten threats? Oh, no, nothing like that, dear. But then again, not everyone is eloquent. Some people are more physical than verbal. The ease at which Rose was discussing her own potential demise shocked Georgia. More than shocking. But she might be onto something. The man, the one that took over Dogwood, I always called him Flip-Flops, but what was his name? If anyone could do violence, it was him and his goons. He doesn't deserve a name. Rose spat on the ground with surprising force. He ruined my husband's legacy, turning the nursery into a breeding ground for drugs and crime. He nearly bankrupted the town trying to fight him. So he could try to hurt you. Oh, yes, I imagine he could find it in his soul to hurt me, if he wanted to. Rose patted Georgia's arm. But that was all so long ago. Your flowers were beautiful, by the way. Rose smiled up at Georgia, her bright eyes full of love and trust. I'm so glad Dogwood has young people like you and Lisa to love it and build it back up. Do you know why Jake would want Ivy to be buried so quickly? My money's on the girlfriend. What do you mean? I saw her crying. Not everything is happy in Happy Valley. Rose tapped her nose. You think they broke up? Bingo. When Georgia got home, she'd have to convince Lisa to tell her what was going on with Jake and figure out if his wanting Ivy in the ground so quickly had anything to do with the smell of bitter almonds and the ever-increasing possibility of poison, or if it was more connected to the way he'd run out of the bakery yesterday as Georgia drove away. But before that, and before they got to Frank's, Georgia had to find a way to tell Rose that her ancient history might not be completely in the past for everyone, that she might still have a target on her back, even after all these years. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a mystery-loving friend, or consider leaving a review on your favorite podcast player. Most of all, thank you so much for being here today. I loved it, and I'm already excited for next week.